Girl, I thought about had her throat constricted when she tried to talk, and she was unable to speak for 6 months. I've had people with seizures that are psychogenic, that are not physically caused, and I really like those clients. It's a challenge. Also, people that come in interesting life settings. I had a woman who came in that said, you know, I've been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. I'm like, why? I really can't help you with that. And she goes, well, I know you can't make the Alzheimer's go away, but can you help me handle it better getting into it? And I went, yeah, you know, really I can. Like, that would be really good. I've had a couple of clients recently with terminal diagnoses, cancer, and then another one has a degenerative neurological disorder. And again, you know, you can't turn that around, but the question is, can you help this experience to be better? I love pain relief clients where someone comes in and they're in just extreme physical pain, and you can see the level of change and how much difference it makes. And you can see the level of change and how much difference it makes. So those sorts of things really are my favorite clients. It's a little bit of a challenge. It's a little bit of something different. I'm frequently accused of being premature, but I guess I'll sort of pass the mic along now since I'm out of answer. But
we appreciate your candor.
I like to be honest, and if people will drink more, I'll be more smart. Here you go.
Alberto, your 3 minutes commences now.
Well, there are two types of clients. The clients I like to work most when they call, they are usually the anxiety, because I've had my issues on anxiety. And I remember Carl Rogers talking about empathy, and it's easier for me to get attached to those people that have anxiety. But however, although I'd rather working with anxiety, the cases that I liked the most were the spirit ones. I live in Brazil, and there's a lot of mysticism and esotericism and candomblé and all these kind of things. And I've had some clients which they said that they were seeing ghosts and that they were talking to a spirit. And I've done exorcism sometimes in the clinic. And I am agnostic. I am materialistic and agnostic. And it was quite funny to see those clients in that perspective. They knew I was agnostic. And one of them had what they called a trickster spirit or something like that. And I had to do mesmerism. It was quite annoying because when I started the AVM induction, I thought it was going to be just like psychology, what I'm used to. I started doing the AVM induction, and the girl opened her eyes and said, "You need to do something else, because he's touching my eyes." And she started talking to the spirit. Of course, at that moment, I was sure she was a schizoparanoid, and that she was talking to something that didn't exist. But I couldn't be one more person to tell that. So I started to do mesmerism. I said that I would do something energetic, which could go straight to her chakras and make rebalance. I talked about the archeos, and that rebalancing would be great. And when we use the energetic thing, we don't need to talk. So the trickster spirit could talk anything he wanted. So although I loved working with anxiety, using submodalities or talking, and using these concepts of ghosts and spirits, which are in Brazil.
15,
I don't know if they're
15 seconds.
Okay, I like it here.
Brilliant. Jürgen, your time starts now.
I don't really have that much of a preference anymore, really. Back in the day, when I first read Frogs of the Princess and I started studying Erickson, I read about the impossibles practice. And I thought, that sounds really, really cool. To try to work with the clients that no one else has succeeded with. And I started doing that at age 21 with a no pay, no change policy. It's a great way to go broke pretty fast. But it's also really, really useful. And I remember when I released my first book, Provocative Hypnosis, John Grinder told me, you realize what you've just done? You're going to get swamped with the most weird, outrageous cases for like ever. And that's been at least partially right. So I like experimenting with the stuff that you're not supposed to be experimenting with, the stuff that's supposedly impossible. For example, 2 years ago, a guy called me from Russia and said, I'm gay. I like to be straight. Would you work with me for this? And I said, sure. This was a no money, no change. It's, of course, completely politically incorrect, and everyone would say that it's impossible. And he was actually bisexual. So he said, well, after the sessions, you like women a little bit more, but he's still just as gay. But it was a fun exploration to do. But these days, I kind of prefer to just see regular clients. And if I have to pick, I would say anger clients. I think few people know how to work with them effectively, and it's one of those topics where if you help like one family member who has rage issues, it really impacts the whole family, like for generations to come. So it's one of the few topics where like family members write me and say, look, after my father saw you 5 years ago, our family became a nice place to live. So that's a cool topic.
Great, thank you very much, Jürgen. Freddie, over to you.
Well, amnesia. Sorry, what was the question again? No, I, as you know, I don't even like people. So I hate working with people. No, I love it. And I love every person that comes through that door is different. My sister-in-law, I was seeing thousands and thousands of people for smoking. And my sister-in-law asked me once, don't get fed up with saying the same thing over and over again. And it was a fair question, because my smoking stuff is pretty much the same for everyone. But I said no, because every person that comes into my office comes in with their own story. And I love stories. Everybody that comes in has their own little story to tell. And I can sit there for 3/4 of an hour, I can listen to that story, and I love it. And it doesn't matter whether I'm working with someone, like a kid with dental phobia, or a woman in her 70s with claustrophobia. For me, each person that's there, the problem they have is a big problem in their life. It doesn't matter if they're doing heroin or if it's just anxiety. For the person sitting in the chair, that is their whole life. And so everyone is as important to me. I don't care if you think, well, it's nail biting, it's not that important as heroin. Of course it is to the person who's nail biting. So I absolutely love the work. And I was saying to somebody the other day, I've been doing this for the best part of 30 years, and I haven't worked for 30 years. And that's how I look at it. I hope I'm never going to work again. Now, because I don't see this as work, this is just joy. And everyone that comes in has a story, and it's just great. So no, I can't say that there's anything I particularly work with. Like Frederick, when you take someone out of chronic pain, that's a magical moment. But is it any more magical than taking someone out of a drug problem, or taking someone out of an anxiety they've had for years? And some years ago, I was saying, I had a lady come and see me in her 70s. She'd had claustrophobia her whole life. And she said to me, it had blighted her life. She said, married a childhood sweetheart, they had a wonderful life, they had a brilliant job, they had all this wonderful social life, but she couldn't do any of it. She came to see me in her 70s. Her husband had passed away, she came to see me. And she walked out of that office without that fear. And I remember thinking to myself, I wish I'd met her when she was 20. I've only been about 10. But I wish I'd met her when she was 20. And then, lo and behold, the next day, the first client that came in was a 20-year-old girl with claustrophobia. It was almost like, well, have someone. So it's all joy for me. I love everything we do. And as I said, there's no one that's more important, no problem that's more exciting. For me, taking someone out of a problem is just the most magical thing we can do as human beings. And we have a brilliant tool called hypnosis that can do it for us.
Yeah.
Look at that. Look at that. 258.05. So this time around we're going to start with Frederick and end with Kate, so everybody gets a full round. We're now passing that down to Frederick. So this time out, our question was conversely to this particular question, while we're bedding ourselves in, is there a type of client or issue that you are not so keen to work with? And if so, please explain. Frederick, over to you.
Well, after Freddie's answer, it's kind of hard to say that there is. That was very nicely put. I mean, there are some where there's that repetition, like with the stop smoking clients, but you're absolutely right. Everyone has a unique story, and they all end up being good to work with. I really don't tend to have clients that I don't like. I've occasionally had, very rarely, someone who would come in. Always our work is a partnership between the client and us. But where they're trying to do their job and my job. And that becomes, again, somewhat more problematic and difficult. But it's always a matter of working with the client, helping them to get where they need to be. Sometimes it's not even a matter at the beginning of helping the client to change. It's a matter first of helping them to get to the place where they can begin to change, and then helping them to change. But in general, my practice is very busy. I enjoy my clients, and I don't really have clients I don't like, so I'm real happy about that.
Great, thank you, Frederick. Alberto, over to you.
There are some clients I don't see, and probably because I graduated in psychology. So as I graduated psychology, I used to work with psychology. And to me, hypnotherapy is psychology, but that's another discussion, and I don't want to start a fight now. As the provocative guy is you, not me. But the kind of client I'm not so familiar to work with are pain control. Because I have a friend who is a physiotherapist, and he works with hypnosis too. And there might be some issues which are physical, and I don't know how to explain, how to manage. So of course, if someone asks me to help me with this kind of pain, a friend or a family member, of course I help. But professionally speaking, I'd rather working with what I studied all these years, which is psychology and hypnotherapy. That's it. I have a bonus for the next one.
Great. Thank you very much, Alberto. Jürgen, over to you.
Well, I would say I like most of my clients, but on occasion I'll see someone I generally don't like, and if I generally don't like them, I have a tendency to send them home. I think that's fair. I'll send it to someone else I don't like. You know, double pleasure that way. It's not so much about client type really, but I prefer not to, like, if I sense that someone is there primarily to please someone else's agenda, I have a tendency not to take them on. I think that's just good ethics. If people are part of the psychiatric system, I have a tendency to be very, very cautious. If people are on psychiatric drugs, I have a tendency not to work with them while they're on the drugs, because, you know, if something happens to them, your ass is in the firing line as the person who's not the psychiatrist. People who are part of like anxiety groups or even like victim groups, in a sense, I've noticed that it can be a challenge to help people change something where, you know, their social life and their identity is tied up to the problem that they claim they want to solve. And I've seen a lot of people who have quit the groups and almost spontaneously released their issues just by doing that. So those types of things, psychiatric drugs, groups for the most part. Often people who are on welfare, at least for the specific symptom that they are on welfare for, I have a tendency to often not work with. And that's about it.
Great, thank you very much, Jürgen. Freddie.
I honestly can't think of anyone that I don't like, strangely enough. Some people you take to more than others. You know, some people you gel with better, but in general, you know, maybe I see that as part of my goal in acting, is to try and make them laugh at some point, which I have a tendency to do, and you know, and try and get that sort of something going.
Popping your hand up so it's not covering that bottom bit.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll tell you a quick story about a guy that came to see me who did. I must have been having a bad day, but this guy came in, he had a fear of dying, anxiety, went for like 10 years. So he wasn't working, he hadn't got a girlfriend, he was just a miserable git, to be honest with you. Anyway, so I listened to him, and I worked with him for the first session, and he was a great subject, you know, everything going. And he went, he felt a lot better, and anyway, he came back for the second session, and he went, oh, you know, I felt better when I, but, you know, and he went, oh. So he had a fear of dying. So I said to him, I'm going to tell you something. I said, you will not like it. I said, I've got to tell you. He said, what? I said, you're going to die. He went, no, please don't say it. But I said, you are. I said, I'll tell you something else, so am I. He was exactly the same age as me, this guy. I said, I'll tell you something else, so am I. I said, you're going to worry about it for the next 25 years and you're going to die. I'm not going to worry about it for the next 25 years and I'm going to die. Either way, we're both going to get there. I said, so you might as well do this session with me and let me sort this thing out for you. You know, it just, you know, it might have been not the best approach, but that day I wasn't having a good day. And so in general, I'm quite nice.
Thank you very much, Freddie. Okay.
How can I top that? I think there's two things. There's the type of client that I don't like to work with now. And if there's one thing that's not on my favourite list, it's the unmotivated client. It's the client that thinks that you're going to wave a magic wand and do it all for them. I truly had a client a while ago who came into the session and said what she wanted to work on. And then she said, well, I'll leave it with you, and I'm just going to go and do some shopping, and I'll be back in an hour. And I'm thinking, what are you leaving with me? And she actually thought that, it wasn't that she thought she could take her mind out of her head. It was that she thought that somehow, just by giving me this challenge, it would miraculously happen while she went to Boots. So I think that was quite curious. And then there's the type of client that I used to not choose to work with, the ones that were a bit odd. And very early on in my career, I had an inquiry, in fact it was really right at the start of my career, for a guy who wanted to get over his knicker fetish. And I thought, you're having a laugh, really? Is it a real thing? So I referred him to a male colleague. And actually, it was really interesting to hear back, because the guy was the youngest only male out of 11 children, and his mother, bless him, was quite frugal. So he had all the hand-me-down girls' knickers for the whole time he grew up. So when he actually became an adult, he decided, what did it? If I'm going to have knickers, I'm going to buy the most expensive flipping knickers I can. So he went to all of the luxury lingerie stores and bought a whole load of knickers. So I would now work with that sort of client, but early on then I chose not to.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Still wearing knickers to this day.
Nice ones.
We can tell by the way you walk. Okay, so we have a different question, a new question, a really different vein of question, this particular one. So, as we appear to be seeing a steady increase in stories regarding hypnosis in the media, printed articles, radio interviews, and television shows, and also that there continues to be an increase in reality shows, do you think that it would be of benefit to have a show focused on hypnotic change work as opposed to stage or comedy shows? And second of all, what format would you choose? So there's a question from Craig Bagley. Starting with you, Alberto, let's hear your answer.
Well, at first I must say that I love the stage and the comedy. And when we think why we study hypnosis, why did we start to think about hypnosis? We always remember Pussiger and the somnambulist guy. Why? I'm talking about that because it's very hard to increase the interest on hypnosis without getting into magic. I guess everyone, almost everyone, that goes into hypnosis starts with the idea of magic. And that's what the stage gives you. Of course, you can have a good stage thing or a bad stage thing. You can have Darren Brown pushing things, pushing people from the buildings, which is a controversy. And although I liked on Netflix. But if you ask me, would it be good to have a change work? I do think it would be good for the community, because although the magic started it all the myths started with the magic too. All the lack of confidence, of giving away the secrets, the fear of getting into a different state of the mind, the somnambulism. So I do think that it would be awesome to have a reality show about not only hypnosis, but especially about change work. Like some group, I guess it's better to use that in sports. Although it would be great to have people showing their mundane lives and how they wake up and go to the bakery and they relieve anxiety, it would be interesting, not? So, because we need to think it's a reality show, so I think if it would be sports and people that are competing with each other in sports and using their minds, mindfulness and self-hypnosis and all this kind of thing, it would be great. And
great, thank you very much, Alberto. Jürgen, if you can not cover up the bottom bit, thank you. Great.
Well, speaking as a guy who has like 1 foot in the meditation world and 1 foot in the hypnosis world, we have Darren Brown pushing people off buildings. Yeah, the meditation world has the Dalai Lama. And it seems like we have an image problem in terms of how we're perceived. I mean, there's a stretch between the Dalai Lama and Manchurian candidates and Svengali and stuff like that. Paul McKenna did something a few years back. He did a show where he would work with people with, phobias and people with Tourette's syndrome, and I thought that was a good show. Really well done. So I think a show that kind of shows some dramatic stuff, like for example, phobias, compulsions, allergies would be really cool. Like when I do seminars, I love to do allergy demos because they're outside of most people's maps of what's possible, and often quite easy to do. So I think something like that, if we could do something like allergies, for example, which is like outside of the map of like what CBT people think is possible, think is possible, that could do something cool. Outside of that, having been on TV a few times, I think sometimes it looks as if to get a job in the media, you have to have bad ethics. Like they're often not trustworthy, and you have to have really good frames and really, really good deals to not get screwed over. So, yeah.
Spot on. Thank you, Jürgen. Let's not miss Freddie. Over to you, Freddie.
Okay, well, there was a good TV programme on a few weeks back about placebo, pain and placebo. That was very good. A proper bit of research. They were talking to people who were doing research in universities. So it came across as a proper piece of TV, a proper bit of reporting. We don't have that. And we can see Paul McKenna. I mean, any of us, if we spent a week, we could get half an hour or an hour of really quality change work. You know, let's say we saw, even if you were really rubbish as a hypnotherapist, they could make that look like you're a god, because they're going to pick out the best bits, as they did with Paul McKenna. What we need, and I'm not saying it just because the man sitting next to me, is someone who is respected, who has gone through it, who is doing the research, to do it properly, and even if it says we're only getting 35% of people quitting smoking, having taken out all of the, you know, the persona, the attitude, you know, the personality, and we're still getting 35% compared to 3% for patches. That's going to be a bit of TV. But we need someone to do it properly and ethically. You know, they've got to report what it is. And that way, we're going to get the hypnotherapy out where it should be. Stage shows, you know, are good fun, but people still think, and it's a bit like the guy who was making a show out of cutting corpses up. He'd freeze them, but he was doing a proper lecture, but it was a show because he was using human bodies, you know, and stripping the skin off and doing all that stuff, and only saw him. And it sort of lessens the worth of it, you know, when it becomes a show. We do need, you know, for us to lift the set, but we need someone like Adam. I'm just saying because he's sitting next to me, because he's got the words, already got enough research, he's got that kind of mind, you know, but it has to be done properly. And if we could do that, then that will lift us up. If we can say, this is a proper bit of research, we've put this many smokers through, this many anxiety people through, these people with phobias, these people with pain, and these are the actual results, and we make a proper TV programme out of that, then that would be worth watching. And I think everyone would watch it, and everyone would start to think, yeah, this is something, it's not dark arts, this is something that the medical world can look at. So that's my feelings on it. It can be done. The way it's done at the moment, the TV company is going to make it fun for them, you know, and make it a bit of TV. And how much time have we got? What's that?
20 seconds.
Okay, I'll tell you quickly. I was asked to do a show for his...
You can have some extra time if you want.
He's broken. He's broken.
A good answer warrants it.
They wanted to do a show on fear of flying. Would I go down to London and do this thing? They filmed me walking on the roof, and they said, you look great, you sound great, you know, it's great. So we sat around this table with his producer, and he said, what are you going to do? I said, well, has anyone got a phobia? So this guy put his hand up, I've got a phobia. So I ran my phobia thing with him, it took me 5 minutes. I said, where's the fear gone now? He said, I haven't got any fear. So this producer said, well, how are we going to make a film out of that? And I shot myself right in the foot. The guy, seriously, the guy who got the job, he took people to the airport, scared of planes, showed them a picture, oh, I'm scared of planes, put them on, do you remember it? And he was useless. He was absolutely useless. And I didn't get the job because I had a phobia. So if you're going to make it, it has to be, so I do think there's value in that, in doing it properly. And I think I'm going to put Adam up for the job. I think, who's here for Adam doing the research? You've got the job.
I've not seen
That's the best answer of the night.
It's not He's more
Over
radio.
to you, Dr. Kate.
Thank you. You might
Got
not
a face
like
for
my
radio.
answer. Just setting it up for you. I think there's a big difference between what Freddie was talking about, which sounds as though it would work well as a documentary, fact-based, evidence-based, and the type of programme that we're more likely to see, which is going to be entertainment. Because TV companies are all about ratings. And if you speak to quite a lot of people, as Freddie mentioned, they want a show. And one of the problems with that is that what makes something a good programme can work against us as a profession. And if you look at things like the Embarrassing Bodies series, some people actually now worry about going to a doctor because of what they've seen. Some of the psychology type programmes where you've had celebrities bearing all, have actually put people off of going to see a psychologist or a counsellor because they've got a skewed perception. So if it's not done well, I think it could actually perpetuate myths rather than dispel myths. So I think then it's all down to the format. And of course, less people are likely to see a factual documentary than they will something that's got Philip Schofield on, such as with You're Back in the Room. So the stage side is always likely to be easier for production companies to go with, whereas a factual documentary may have a higher cost proportionally, but it may also have a lower audience, so would be less desirable. I think there is room for it, but it's something that would be very difficult to manage, and Freddie mentioned about really good contracts. I think if anybody was going to do something like that, it really would be a case of making sure you've got everything tied down so that not only you're reducing the reputational risk for the profession, but also you're reducing the reputational risk for the particular therapist who's going to be involved.
Great, thank you very much, Kate. Frederick.
I think psychotherapy is inherently hard to dramatize. If you think about straight up dramatic shows, or even comedy shows, they'll sometimes show something about a practice, but actually showing a therapist of any stripe, a hypnotherapist or whoever, is sitting and working with a client, doesn't tend to be too dramatic. When you have reality-based shows on there, I think those sorts of shows tend to attract, as the clients, really damaged individuals that are deciding to go into a public venue, sometimes with some very significant problems, which are not even really necessarily the presenting issues, the real issues. So I have real hesitancy about a reality type show trying to depict any kind of psychotherapy. There was a book a few years back called Myths, Lies, and Downright Stupidity by a guy named John Stossel, who was a reporter on 2020 on ABC in the United States. And it's a great book. It's perfect for the bathroom because each chapter is like a page and a half long. And so, you just got everything you need right there. And his chapter on hypnosis, though, was great. And I remember he starts it out by saying, just when I thought I could spot a fraud a mile away, hypnosis comes along and fools me. And he gives this great account of this woman in New York who's actually a hypnotist, but she decided to have eye surgery using hypnosis as the only anesthesia. And he followed her along through the entire process, and just, the little telling of it, like that would work well as a documentary if someone wanted to do a serious documentary. But I also think you're right. That's the sort of thing that could have a build on like Netflix, and over time a lot of people watch it if it's really engaging, but it's not going to be like the Super Bowl and everybody tunes in to see it. I remember when I was invited on TV, local TV, a few years ago, and they wanted me, sprung on me at the last minute, they wanted me to actually hypnotize the news anchor on the air, and the segment was going to be 2 minutes and 18 seconds long. And I went, okay, so I did this very nice induction, and it went really well. What I didn't know at the time was that the way they were shooting it was they were pulling the camera in and out and doing weird like Dutch angles and stuff with it. So that was like a huge credibility builder. It's just problematic. It's just problematic to try and dramatize this sort of thing. Maybe a straight drama show that kind of depicts it, maybe a documentary. Also, stage hypnotists tend to be much maligned, but when I do a presentation, I try to think of it as an entertainment event, and I know you do too. Adam, I heard you this morning, and you paced through that very, very well. And the other speakers here, we have very good speakers, and it's not just lecturing information, but you're wanting to engage your audience and move through. I think our stage colleagues can actually help us if they stay up on what's going on in the field and present things in the best light that they can present it in. I think that there can be some benefit there. I also think that there's a reset that goes on with our profession, where I've seen a lot of articles on hypnosis over the last few years in popular press. They always start with the same place. Oh, it's amazing. We've done some neuroimaging and we found out this stuff was real. Really? since the article that said that 3 weeks ago and the one that said that a year before that, and the one that started out the same way like a couple of months before that, it's as if every time an article on this comes up, it's, you know, not just swinging watches anymore. Great, that's a great lead for your story. Every story, it's like Groundhog Day in the stories. They reset every time it resets. So it's a nice thought question, but I don't know that the media will help us.
Thank you very much, Frederick. Thank you, everybody.